Pregnant bride left at the altar, but what happens at the reception leaves all guests speechless. Hello, welcome, leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. In a picturesque New England town, a wedding day turns into a shocking spectacle when a pregnant bride is seemingly abandoned at the altar. But as the stunned guests gather for what they believe will be a consolation reception, they find themselves unwitting participants in an elaborate plan that will expose long-buried secrets, challenge family loyalties, and redefine the meaning of love and trust. Little do they know, the events about to unfold will leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about the couple and their own relationships. The quaint chapel of St. Mary's stood proudly against the backdrop of a crisp autumn morning in the heart of Burlington, Vermont. Its weathered brick exterior and towering white steeple had borne witness to countless unions over the years, but today's wedding promised to be one for the history books. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation as guests filed into the pews, their excited whispers echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Delicate bouquets of white roses and baby's breath adorned each row, their sweet fragrance mingling with the scent of polished wood and old hymn books. Among the sea of pastel dresses and pressed suits, Sofia Martinez's family sat rigid in the front row, their faces a mix of pride and barely concealed tension. Her mother, Elena, smoothed imaginary wrinkles from her silk dress, while her father, Richard, tugged at his collar, his eyes darting nervously towards the chapel entrance. In the bridal suite, 28-year-old Sofia stood before a full-length mirror, her hands resting gently on the swell of her stomach, visible even beneath the intricate lace of her wedding gown. Her dark eyes, usually dancing with mischief, now held a steely determination that belied the vulnerability of her current state. "You don't have to go through with this, honey," her best friend and maid of honor, Lily, said softly, adjusting the delicate veil atop Sofia's cascading curls. Sofia met Lily's concerned gaze in the mirror. "I do, Lil. More than you know." She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "It's time." As the first notes of the wedding march filled the chapel, all eyes turned expectantly towards the doors. They swung open, revealing Sofia in all her radiant glory. Gasps of admiration rippled through the congregation as she began her slow procession down the aisle, one hand cradling her baby bump, the other clutching a bouquet of calla lilies. Her fiancé, James Anderson, stood at the altar. His tall frame cut an impressive figure in his tailored tuxedo. His chiseled features remained impassive as he watched Sofia approach, but those who knew him well might have noticed the slight twitch in his jaw, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. As Sofia reached the altar, she turned to hand her bouquet to Lily, exchanging a look that spoke volumes. Then, she faced James, their eyes locking in a moment of silent communication. The officiant cleared his throat, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Suddenly, James took a step back. A collective gasp arose from the guests as he shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Sofia. I can't do this." The chapel erupted in shocked murmurs as James turned on his heel and strode quickly down the aisle, disappearing through the heavy wooden doors. Sofia stood frozen, her face a mask of disbelief and hurt. Elena leapt to her feet, her voice shrill. "Sofia! Oh, my poor baby!" She rushed towards her daughter, arms outstretched. But before Elena could reach her, Sofia's expression hardened. She raised a hand, halting her mother in her tracks. "No," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "The reception will go on as planned." A stunned silence fell over the chapel as Sofia turned to address the bewildered guests. "Please," she said, her chin held high, "join us at the Lakeside Manor. There's more to this story than meets the eye." As the murmuring crowd began to file out of the chapel, Sofia caught Lily's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Lily slipped away, phone already in hand, fingers flying across the screen. Outside, autumn leaves swirled around the departing guests, their excited chatter a stark contrast to the somber faces of Sofia's family. Richard gripped Elena's arm, steering her towards their car. "What is that girl thinking?" he hissed. She's making a spectacle of herself. Elena dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Oh, Richard, what will people say? Our pregnant daughter, abandoned at the altar. As they drove away, neither noticed the black sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing the occupant who watched the unfolding drama with keen interest. Back in the chapel, Sophia stood alone before the altar, her hand resting protectively over her unborn child. Her voice was barely a whisper, but filled with resolve. It's time to end this charade, once and for all. The grand ballroom of Lakeside Manor sparkled with elegant decor, a stark contrast to the somber mood of the guests filing in. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in ivory linens, each centerpiece a masterpiece of white roses and flickering candles. The sweeping views of Lake Champlain through floor-to-ceiling windows would typically inspire awe, but today, they seemed to mock the joyous occasion that wasn't. Sophia's entrance caused a ripple effect through the crowd. She had changed out of her wedding gown into a sleek, white maternity dress that accentuated her pregnancy. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her makeup, though tear-stained, had been carefully retouched. The whispers grew louder as she made her way to the head table, chin held high. "Can you believe she's actually going through with this?" one guest muttered. "Poor dear, she must be in shock," another replied. Sophia's parents approached, their faces a mixture of concern and embarrassment. Elena reached out, her voice strained. "Darling, please, let's just go home. We can explain to everyone." "Explain what, Mom?" Sophia's voice was calm but carried an edge that made Elena flinch. "That your pregnant daughter was left at the altar? That the Anderson-Martinez merger is off? Or is there something else you'd like to share with everyone?" Richard's face darkened. "Sophia, that's enough. You're making a scene." A sardonic smile played at Sophia's lips. "Oh, Dad, the scene is just beginning." As if on cue, the ballroom doors swung open. James strode in, his tuxedo jacket slung casually over his shoulder. The room fell silent, all eyes darting between him and Sophia. "Ladies and gentlemen," James announced, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd, "I believe I owe you all an explanation." He made his way to Sophia's side, taking her hand in a gesture that left the onlookers gasping. Gone was the cold, distant man from the chapel. In his place stood someone whose eyes shone with a mix of determination and... Was that love? "First," James continued, "I want to apologize for the deception. Sophia and I never intended to hurt anyone. But we realized that a traditional wedding wouldn't uncover the truth we've been seeking." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elena swayed slightly, steadied by Richard's firm grip on her elbow. Sophia stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Many of you have known our families for years. You've watched James and me grow up, cheered when we announced our engagement. But beneath the surface of our perfect union, a web of lies and manipulation has been growing." She paused, her eyes scanning the room before settling on her parents. "Mom, Dad, did you really think we wouldn't figure it out? The real reason you pushed so hard for this marriage?" Richard's face paled. "Sophia, please." "No, Dad, no more secrets." Sophia's voice cracked slightly. "James and I have known for months about the embezzlement scheme. How you and the Andersons have been siphoning funds from both companies, planning to use our marriage as cover for the merger that would hide your tracks." Gasps and shocked exclamations filled the room. Elena collapsed into a nearby chair, her perfectly manicured hands covering her face. James took over, his arm protectively around Sophia. "We considered going to the authorities immediately, but we needed proof. Proof that we knew would only surface if you thought your plan was succeeding." As he spoke, the ballroom doors opened once more. Two men in dark suits entered, their badges glinting under the chandeliers. "Mr. Martinez, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson," one of them called out, "we'd like you to come with us for questioning." Chaos erupted in the ballroom. Guests began talking all at once, some moving towards the exits, others crowding closer to hear more. Through it all, Sophia and James stood united, their hands intertwined. Lily appeared at Sophia's side, a supportive hand on her friend's back. "You did it," she whispered. "It's over." But as Richard was led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of fury and betrayal, Sophia felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. "Sophia!" James's voice was panicked. "What's wrong?" She looked up at him, fear replacing the determination in her eyes. "James, I think the baby's coming." As James called for help and the ballroom erupted into a new kind of frenzy, no one noticed the dark-suited figure slipping out a side door, a phone pressed to their ear. "It's done," they murmured. But there's been an unexpected development. The pristine halls of Burlington Medical Center buzzed with activity as Sophia was rushed through on a gurney, her face contorted in pain. James jogged alongside, his hand firmly grasping hers, all pretense of their earlier charade abandoned in the face of this new crisis. "Breathe soft," he urged, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "Everything's going to be okay." Dr. Laura Chun, a petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, met them at the entrance to the maternity ward. "Sophia Martinez?" she confirmed, quickly scanning the chart handed to her by a nurse. "I understand you're about 7 months along. Let's get you checked out." As they wheeled Sophia into an examination room, Lily burst through the doors, still in her bridesmaid dress, her face flushed from exertion. "I'm here," she gasped. "What's happening?" James turned to her, his usually composed face etched with worry. "They're examining her now. It might be false labor, but with the stress of everything." His voice trailed off as Dr. Chun emerged from the room. "Mr. Anderson, a word, please." James followed the doctor a few steps away, his heart pounding. "Is she all right? The baby?" Dr. Chen's expression was grave. "Sophia's experiencing preterm labor. We're doing everything we can to stop it, but I need to prepare you. If we can't, there's a significant risk to both Sophia and the baby." James felt the floor sway beneath him. All the careful planning, the months of deception to expose their parents' crimes, none of it mattered in the face of potentially losing Sophia and their child. Meanwhile, in the examination room, Sophia lay on her side, monitors beeping steadily around her. Her mind raced, replaying the events of the day. The plan had worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. Now, as another contraction gripped her, she wondered if the price of justice would be too high. A soft knock at the door preceded Lily's entrance. "Hey, warrior," she said softly, moving to Sophia's bedside. "How are you holding up?" Sophia managed a weak smile. "Been better. Lily, if anything happens to me don't." Lily cut her off firmly. "Don't you dare start with goodbyes. You're the strongest person I know, sophomore. You and this baby are going to be just fine." As Lily spoke, her phone buzzed insistently in her purse. She ignored it, focusing on her friend, unaware of the urgent messages piling up, messages that would soon throw their carefully orchestrated plan into disarray. Outside in the waiting room, a crowd had begun to gather. News travels fast in small towns, and the drama of an abandoned bride going into premature labor was too juicy to ignore. Among the concerned faces of wedding guests and curious hospital staff, a figure in a dark suit stood quietly observing, occasionally murmuring into a cell phone. James paced the hallway, torn between being at Sophia's side and managing the fallout from their revelation. His own parents were being questioned by the authorities. His family's company was in chaos, and now the life of his fiancée and unborn child hung in the balance. A commotion at the end of the hall caught his attention. Elena Martinez, still in her mother-of-the-bride outfit, was arguing with a nurse. "That's my daughter in there." Elena's voice was shrill with panic. "You have to let me see her." James interceded, his voice low but firm. "Elena, now isn't the time. Sophia needs calm and dash. Don't you dare tell me what my daughter needs." Elena hissed, her carefully cultivated socialite image crumbling. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't concocted this ridiculous scheme Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Chun interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "I understand you're upset, but I must insist you lower your voice. This is a hospital, and your daughter needs rest. As Elena deflated, sinking into a nearby chair, James's phone buzzed. The caller ID made his blood run cold. It was the detective in charge of the case against their parents. Anderson, he answered tersely. The detective's voice was grim. We've got a problem. Your father's gone missing. The next few hours passed in a blur of beeping monitors, hushed conversations, and mounting tension. Sophia drifted in and out of consciousness, the medication to stop her labor making her groggy. James split his time between her bedside and frantic phone calls in the hallway, trying to manage the escalating situation with his father's disappearance. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold visible through the hospital windows, Dr. Chun delivered a cautiously optimistic update. The contractions have slowed significantly, she informed James and Lily, who had refused to leave despite the chaos unfolding outside the hospital. If we can keep Sophia stable for the next 24 hours, we should be in the clear. Relief washed over James, but it was short-lived. His phone buzzed again, another update from the detective. He excused himself, stepping into an empty consultation room for privacy. "Talk to me," he said without preamble. The detective's voice crackled through the speaker. "We've got a lead on your father. An employee at your family's private airstrip reported seeing a man matching his description boarding a plane late last night. We're tracking the flight plan now." James's mind raced. If his father fled the country, it could jeopardize everything they'd worked for. "Keep me posted," he said tersely, ending the call. As he turned to leave the room, he found himself face to face with Richard Martinez. Sophia's father looked haggard, his usually impeccable suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. "Is it true?" Richard's voice was barely above a whisper. "About the baby?" For a moment, James was tempted to lash out, to blame this man for the stress that had put Sophia and their child in danger. But the defeated slump of Richard's shoulders gave him pause. "She's stable for now," James replied cautiously. "The doctors are optimistic." Richard nodded, seeming to age years before James's eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said, slumping into a chair. "The embezzlement, it started small, just a little here and there to cover some bad investments. But then your father got involved, and suddenly we were in too deep." James listened silently, his emotions warring between sympathy and disgust. "Why are you telling me this now?" Richard looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Because I want to make it right. For Sophia, for my grandchild. I'm ready to confess everything." As Richard spoke, neither man noticed the door to the consultation room slowly closing, or the shadow that moved swiftly down the hallway. Meanwhile, in Sophia's room, Lily sat scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. The messages she'd been ignoring earlier now demanded her full attention. Her network of contacts, carefully cultivated over months of preparation for this day, were sending alarming reports. "Lily," Sophia's voice, weak but alert, startled her. "What's wrong?" Lily hesitated, torn between protecting her friend and sharing the potentially crucial information. "It's probably nothing, but there's chatter about offshore accounts we didn't know about, and some of our key witnesses are suddenly unreachable." Sophia struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement. "We can't let them get away with this, Lily. Not now, not after everything we've sacrificed." Before Lily could respond, alarms began blaring from the monitors surrounding Sophia's bed. Dr. Chun rushed in, her face a mask of professional concern. "Sophia, I need you to relax," she said firmly, checking the readouts. "Your blood pressure is spiking, and it's putting stress on the baby." As nurses swarmed into the room, James burst through the door, his face pale with fear. "What's happening?" Dr. Chun turned to him, her voice calm but urgent. "We may need to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's in distress." Time seemed to stand still as James moved to Sophia's side, clasping her hand in his. In that moment, the conspiracy, the family drama, the years of deception, all of it faded away. All that mattered was Sophia and their child. "I'm scared, James," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'm right here, sophomore. We've come this far together. Whatever happens next, we face it as a family." As the medical team prepared for the procedure, Lily slipped out of the room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had a decision to make, one that could change everything. Outside the hospital, the rising sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. A black sedan with tinted windows pulled up to the entrance, its engine idling. The back door opened, revealing a familiar face, James's father, looking nothing like a man on the run. He stepped out, straightening his tie. "Time to end this game," he muttered, striding purposefully towards the hospital entrance. Inside, as Sophia was wheeled towards the operating room, the stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of two powerful families, but the future of an innocent life hanging in the balance. The operating room buzzed with controlled urgency as Dr. Chan and her team prepared for the emergency C-section. Sophia lay on the table, her eyes wide with fear and determination, while James, now dressed in sterile scrubs, stood by her side, his hand firmly grasping hers. "Okay, Sophia," Dr. Chun said, her voice calm and reassuring behind her surgical mask. "We're going to begin now. You'll feel some pressure, but no pain. Just focus on James and take deep breaths." As the procedure began, James leaned close to Sophia's ear, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've got this, sophomore. You're the strongest person I know. Our little one is lucky to have you as a mom." Sophia managed a weak smile, squeezing James's hand as she felt the strange sensation of the doctors working. "We did it, didn't we?" she murmured. "Exposed the truth, stood up to our families." "We did," James affirmed, his eyes never leaving hers. "And now we're about to meet the most important truth of all, our baby." Meanwhile, in the hospital corridor, a tense confrontation was unfolding. Lily, her bridesmaid dress rumpled and her eyes blazing with determination, stood facing James's father, William Anderson. "Mr. Anderson," Lily said, her voice low but firm, "I'm afraid I can't let you go any further." William's eyebrows rose, a mixture of amusement and annoyance crossing his face. "And who exactly are you to stop me, young lady? I'm here to see my son and his fiancée. I'm the person who's been tracking your every move for the past 6 months," Lily retorted, pulling out her phone, "including your little escape attempt last night. One call from me, and the police will be here in minutes." A flicker of uncertainty passed over William's face before his usual mask of confidence reasserted itself. "You're bluffing. You have no idea what's really going on here." "Oh, don't I?" Lily countered, her finger hovering over her phone's screen. "The offshore accounts in the Caymans? The shell companies in Delaware? The consulting fees paid to non-existent firms? I know it all, Mr. Anderson. The question is, how much does James know?" As William's face paled, Richard Martinez rounded the corner, stopping short at the sight before him. "Will, what the hell are you doing here?" Before William could respond, a nurse burst out of the operating room, her face flushed with excitement. "It's a girl," she announced. "A beautiful, healthy baby girl." The tension in the corridor broke as a collective sigh of relief echoed through the space. But the moment of joy was short-lived as the reality of the situation reasserted itself. William turned to Richard, his voice low and urgent. "We need to talk. Now." As the two men moved away, huddled in intense conversation, Lily's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID made her heart race. It was her contact at the FBI. Inside the operating room, the air was filled with the strong, healthy cries of a newborn. Dr. Chun held up the squirming, pink bundle for Sophia and James to see. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "You have a beautiful daughter." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she reached out a trembling hand to touch her baby's cheek. "She's perfect," she whispered. James leaned down, pressing a kiss to Sophia's forehead, his own eyes glistening with tears. "Just like her mother," he murmured. As the medical team bustled around them, cleaning and checking the baby, James and Sophia shared a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. For a brief, shining moment, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only this room, this moment, this miracle they had created together. But reality was about to come crashing back in, bringing with it revelations that would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew. The private hospital room was a cocoon of new parent bliss, temporarily insulated from the storm brewing outside its walls. Sophia reclined in bed, cradling her newborn daughter, while James perched beside them, unable to take his eyes off his little family. "She needs a name," Sophia mused, running a gentle finger along the baby's downy cheek. James nodded, a soft smile playing at his lips. "What about Verity?" he suggested. "It means truth, in Latin. Seems fitting, given everything we've been through." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Verity," she repeated, testing the name. "I love it. Verity Anderson Martinez, our little truth-teller." A soft knock at the door interrupted their reverie. Lily poked her head in, her face a mixture of joy and apprehension. "Hey, new parents," she said softly. "Mind if I come in? There's something we need to discuss." James and Sophia exchanged a glance, the weight of the world outside their room settling back onto their shoulders. "Of course," James said, gesturing for Lily to enter. Lily approached the bed, pausing to coo over baby Verity before taking a deep breath. "First off, congratulations. She's absolutely beautiful." Her expression grew serious. "But we have a situation developing. Your fathers are here, James." "Both of them." James stiffened, his protective instinct kicking into high gear. "What do they want?" "That's the thing," Lily said, her voice low. "They're claiming there's more to the story than we know. My contact at the FBI just called. Apparently, the embezzlement scheme goes way deeper than we thought. It involves high-level government officials, international crime syndicates. We may have stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple corporate fraud." Sophia clutched Verity closer, her face paling. "What are you saying, Lily? That we're in danger?" Before Lily could respond, the door burst open. William Anderson strode in, followed closely by Richard Martinez and two men in dark suits who screamed, "Federal agent." "Son," William said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "We need to talk. All of us." James moved protectively in front of Sophia and the baby, his voice cold. "I think you've said enough, Dad. The authorities can handle it from here." One of the suited men stepped forward, flashing a badge. "I'm Agent Thompson, FBI. Mr. Anderson, Ms. Martinez, I'm afraid this situation is more complex than you realize. Your parents aren't just embezzlers. They're key witnesses in a major international investigation." A stunned silence fell over the room. Sophia was the first to break it, her voice trembling slightly. "What kind of investigation?" Richard moved closer to the bed, his eyes pleading. "Sweetheart, we never meant for you to get involved in this. The embezzlement, it was a cover. We've been working as informants for years, tracking a global money laundering operation. You expect us to believe that?" James scoffed, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. Agent Thompson nodded gravely. "It's true. Your parents have been instrumental in helping us build a case against some very dangerous people. People who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate any threat to their operation." The implications of his words hung heavy in the air. Sophia instinctively cradled Verity closer, while James's mind raced, trying to process this new information. William stepped forward, his usual bravado replaced by a weary resignation. "We thought we could keep you out of it. The arranged marriage, the merger, it was all part of our cover. We never anticipated you two would actually fall in love, let alone start investigating us." Lily, who had been quietly tapping away at her phone, suddenly looked up, her face pale. "Guys, we have a problem. My sources are reporting unusual activity around the hospital. I think we may have been compromised." As if on cue, the lights in the room flickered ominously. Agent Thompson's hand moved to his weapon, his posture tensing. "We need to move. Now." James and Sophia shared a look of mingled fear and determination. Everything they thought they knew had been turned on its head, but one thing remained constant: their commitment to each other, and their newborn daughter. As Agent Thompson began coordinating with hospital security, and William and Richard huddled with the other agent, James leaned close to Sophia and Verity. "I promise you," he whispered fiercely, "I will keep you both safe, whatever it takes." Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and resolve. "Together," she whispered back. "We face this together." Outside the hospital room, the elevator dinged, its doors sliding open to reveal a group of men in medical scrubs, their faces obscured by surgical masks. As they moved purposefully down the hall towards Sophia's room, a glint of metal beneath one man's scrub top suggested they weren't there to check on the new mother's vitals. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of two families, but potentially the outcome of a years-long international investigation. And at the center of it all, oblivious to the danger closing in, lay a newborn baby girl named Verity, a living symbol of the truth that had brought them all to this moment. The tension in Sophia's hospital room was palpable as Agent Thompson barked orders into his comm device. "We need immediate backup at Burlington Medical Center. Potential hostile situation. Civilians involved." William and Richard exchanged grim looks before Richard turned to his daughter. "Sophia, honey, I know this is a lot to take in, but right now we need to focus on getting you and the baby to safety." James, his protective instincts in overdrive, was already scanning the room for potential escape routes. "The window," he suggested, gesturing to the fourth-floor view of the parking lot below. Agent Thompson shook his head. "Too exposed. We need to." His words were cut short by the sound of commotion in the hallway. Muffled shouts and the unmistakable pop of gunfire sent everyone into action. "Bathroom," Agent Thompson commanded, ushering the group towards the small en suite. "Anderson, Martinez, help me barricade the door." As James and the two older men rushed to push a heavy cabinet in front of the main door, Lily helped Sophia out of bed, supporting her as they made their way to the bathroom. Sophia clutched Verity tightly to her chest, the newborn remarkably quiet amidst the chaos. Once everyone was crammed into the small space, Agent Thompson pulled out his phone. "I'm activating an emergency protocol. A helicopter is on its way to the roof." William's eyes widened. "The roof? That's 5 floors up, and our best shot at getting out of here alive," the agent retorted. He turned to James and Sophia. "I know you have no reason to trust your parents right now, but I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. The people after us will stop at nothing to keep their operation under wraps." A loud crash from the main room indicated the intruders had breached the barricade. Agent Thompson drew his weapon, positioning himself at the bathroom door. "When I give the signal, we move. Stay low, stay quiet, and whatever happens, protect that baby." James wrapped his arms around Sophia and Verity, his voice low and fierce in Sophia's ear. "We're going to make it through this. All of us." Sophia nodded, her eyes meeting James's with a look of determination that belied her exhaustion. "Together," she whispered. As the sounds of ransacking grew closer, Agent Thompson held up his hand, silently counting down from 3. On 1. He flung open the bathroom door, his gun at the ready. "FBI, drop your weapons." The ensuing firefight was brief but intense. Taking advantage of the confusion, the group slipped out of the bathroom and into the hallway. They raced towards the stairwell, Agent Thompson providing cover fire as William and Richard helped support Sophia. As they burst onto the roof, the whir of helicopter blades filled the air. The wind whipped around them, nearly drowning out Agent Thompson's shouts. "Go! Go! Go!" One by one, they clambered into the chopper, first Lily, then Richard helping Sophia and the baby, followed by James and William. As Agent Thompson made a final sweep of the roof, a figure emerged from the stairwell, gun raised. Time seemed to slow as the agent dove for the helicopter, shots ringing out behind him. The chopper lifted off, banking sharply to avoid the gunfire. Inside, James cradled Sophia and Verity, his heart pounding. Agent Thompson slumped against the door, grimacing as he pressed a hand to his bleeding arm. "We're clear," he grunted. "For now." As the helicopter soared over Burlington, the first light of dawn breaking on the horizon, the gravity of their situation began to sink in. They were alive, but they were also fugitives, running from a danger none of them fully understood. Sophia looked down at Verity, peacefully asleep despite the turbulence. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. James squeezed her shoulder, his eyes meeting those of his father and future father-in-law. "Now," he said firmly, "we get the whole truth, and then we fight back." 3 months later, a modest cabin on the outskirts of a small town in rural Maine buzzed with activity. Maps and documents covered every available surface. Laptops hummed with encrypted communications, and the air was thick with the scent of coffee and determination. In the center of it all, Sophia sat in a rocking chair, Verity nursing contentedly in her arms. The new mother looked tired but resolute, her eyes scanning a document Lily had just handed her. "This is it?" Sophia asked, her voice a mix of hope and disbelief. "We finally have enough to take them down?" Lily nodded, a triumphant smile playing at her lips. "Every transaction, every shell company, every dirty politician and corrupt CEO. It's all here, thanks to your parents' intel and our additional digging." James entered the room, his hair mussed and dark circles under his eyes betraying nights of little sleep. He pressed a kiss to Sophia's forehead, then gently stroked Verity's cheek. "How are my girls?" "Ready to go home," Sophia replied with a weary smile. "Please tell me this nightmare is almost over." Before James could respond, the cabin door opened, admitting William, Richard, and Agent Thompson. The men looked haggard but determined. "It's time," Agent Thompson announced. "Our team is in position. In 24 hours, we'll be executing simultaneous raids across 3 continents." William stepped forward, his usual bravado tempered by months of close quarters and shared danger. "Son, Sophia, I know we can never fully make up for the years of deception, but I hope this helps set things right." Richard nodded in agreement, his eyes misting as he gazed at his granddaughter. "We did it all to make the world a little safer for moments like this. For her." James took a deep breath, exchanging a look with Sophia before addressing the room. "When this is all over, there's going to be a lot to process, trust to rebuild. But right now, we have a job to finish." As the group huddled around the main table, finalizing details for the operation that would shake the foundations of international finance and politics, Verity let out a happy gurgle. The sound drew every eye in the room, a poignant reminder of what they were fighting for. Hours later, as dawn broke over the Maine woods, news alerts began flooding in. Headlines screamed of massive raids, high-profile arrests, and a global financial shakeup. Phrases like "biggest corruption bust in history" and "international money laundering ring exposed" dominated every channel. In the cabin, the mood was one of exhausted elation. As Agent Thompson coordinated with his team via satellite phone, James and Sophia stood by the window, Verity cradled between them. "It's really over," Sophia whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. James nodded, wrapping his arms around his family. "A new beginning," he corrected gently. "For all of us." Lily approached, her laptop in hand. "You might want to see this," she said, turning the screen towards them. A video was playing, footage from their wedding day, the moment James had left Sophia at the altar. But now, with context, the pain and confusion on their faces read as determination and resolve. "They're calling you heroes," Lily explained. "The stories everywhere, the bride and groom who faked a wedding disaster to help bring down an international crime syndicate." Sophia let out a surprised laugh. "Heroes? We were just trying to uncover the truth." "Sometimes," came William's voice from across the room, "that's the most heroic thing you can do." As the cabin filled with the sounds of relief, laughter, and plans for the future, Verity began to fuss. Sophia rocked her gently, humming a lullaby. James watched them, overwhelmed by love and the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. "You know," he mused, "when I left you at the altar, I never imagined we'd end up here." Sophia smiled up at him, her eyes shining. Life's funny that way, but I wouldn't change a thing. Neither would I, James agreed, leaning in for a kiss. As the sun rose higher, bathing the cabin in warm light, the unlikely group of heroes began to plan their return to the world. A world they had helped make just a little bit safer, a little bit more honest. And at the center of it all was Verity, the living embodiment of the truth they had fought so hard to uncover. Her future, like the dawning day, was bright with possibility. Thank you for listening until the end. Share your opinion about the story in the comments and let us know which character you liked the most. If this story touched you and you want to hear more, click on the next story appearing on your screen. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a great community of people who share emotional stories together. Until the next story.